Hey y'all, Eli here. I know it's been a while. I've been traveling and I graduated. So I wanted to get back to something that I started a little while ago, which is tracking 15 of some of the most popular cards at CGC to see if their grading's gotten any lighter or easier because many people have thought that their grading standards have been relaxed. And it's kind of interesting. After looking at the data so far, and you'll see it in a second, it seems to me like the grading for modern cards has probably gotten easier, but I'm not so sure it has for older cards, especially Japanese older cards. I'll show you in a sec what I mean, and it'll be interesting to hear what you all think. So here we are. As you can see, I have 15 cards here, maybe 16. I don't remember. I started tracking from all eras, ages, and I tried to get Japanese, English, like holo, non-holo, just so we had a broad swath of stuff. And if you look previously, Dan at Catch 'em All Collectibles actually did an analysis overall and found that tens had increased sharply overall across the board at CGC, but we didn't really have a sense of what cards specifically are getting graded more. And really, we can only look at that for cards with large sample sizes, because obviously, if only 5 cards have gotten graded, in the last 2 months for a particular card, it doesn't tell us a lot about whether the grading standards have been relaxed or not. I want to come here, and we'll start right here at the Champions Pass Charizard V, which is one of the most graded cards of all time anywhere. And as you saw before we came here, the number of pristine tens up until they released the prop report was about 0.5%. And now we're up to 2.5%. So the number of pristine tens increased by about 10 times. The number of perfect tens increased by, almost 30 times. But there were only 2 out of the first 17,000 graded that were perfect tens. And now we've had 2 in the last 680. So it's still very difficult to get, but far more possible. So if you compare, look, the pristine tens and perfect tens all together, you had almost 3% graded that way as tens since the pop report went live. And before that, it was only, 0.5%. You also saw a market increase in the number of 9.5s. You had an increase here from about 20% to 30%, and then a decrease in the 9s. So I think what you saw actually almost exactly, you saw a decrease here in the number of 9s from 50% to 40%, and it just went, part of that went to 9.5s, and part of that went to 10s. So that's modern. And then you've got modern here, Japanese. This was a Charizard, it was a promo. Similar sort of thing happening, although not a stark difference at 10s, but you had a 4 times multiplier in the perfect 10s, about a 2.5 times multiplier in the pristine 10s, and then once again at 9.5s you had about 1.5 times more in the number of 9.5s. So this is a modern Japanese card, and then a decrease in the 9s. So we're seeing so far in these 2 cards is that there was a decrease in the number of 9s, and they fed an increase in 9.5s and 10s. So here's the hidden fates, the legendary birds. Once again, we see a similar sort of thing. In fact, the number of 10s here multiplied by about 6 times overall. Once again, an increase in the 9.5s, decrease in 9s, and across the board, actually, if you look from pretty much 8.5 on down, there really wasn't. I guess there was a slight increase in decrease in 8.5s, but really there wasn't a huge change. It's really up here at the 10s and 9.5s. But here's where it starts getting interesting. And look at the Charizard from Base Unlimited. Before, you had 0 perfect 10s, we still have 0. 0 pristine 10s, still have 0. The number of 9.5s definitely went up. It increased by about 7 or 8 times. And the number of 9s went up slightly, just very slightly as well. But if you look across the board, there wasn't a huge decrease. In fact, the number of low grades under 7s went up slightly. Which is really fascinating. I think what you'll find as you go down is actually for vintage cards, especially vintage English and English, I think, there really wasn't a change in grading, at least if the quality of the card being sent today is the same as before, which we don't know for sure. So here's Evolution's Charizard, 0 10s across the board there. We had a slight increase in 9.5s, a slight increase in 9s, and then actually a decrease here in 8.5s, and everything else kind of stay the same. Mew, the Pokemon League promo. This is a vintage promo, Black Star promo from Wizard of the Coast. Once again, we also had about a 4 times increase in pristine 10s, an increase in perfect 10s just slightly in rate, and then a sharp increase here in the 9.5. So that's about a triple the size. But across the board, after that, once again, kind of the same. Rayquaza, Vivid Voltage, Amazing Rares. increase in 9.5s, and then the same trends across the board. Charizard from Shining Fates, also a very highly graded card. Huge increase here in the number of 10s. Look at this. This is a 7 or 8 times increase. Once again, this is a modern full art card, and then a slight increase in 9.5s as well. And then, yeah, similar things we've seen on modern across the board. Here's a McDonald's promo card, which has pretty much 0 9s and 10s almost. Slight increase in 9.5s, and then same across the board there. Here's another vintage card, Charmander, first edition from Team Rocket set. Also a slight increase here in 9.5s, slight increase in 9s, but really what we saw from here and from the Charizard base set is that the grading for these vintage cards has been roughly the same. And while there was an increase here for the Black Star promo in the number of 9.5s granted, or I'm sorry, in the number of 9s granted. Sorry, I'm not reading correctly. Yeah, the number of 9.5s granted. It's still, I think what you're going to find is for these vintage cards, you're not going to see the same thing. Because look at this Dark Charizard. Also, there's actually a decrease here in the number of 9.5, so you look at the percent. And similar stats across the board. This Typhlosion, there was an increase in the number of 9.5s and 9, which is interesting. It's an anomaly here. It's a Japanese vintage, but right about here, the sample sizes are getting pretty low. The Charizard from Crystal Guardians, another one. Slight increase in the number of 9.5s, but across the board kind of looking the same as well. Pikachu from Expedition set, a pretty large increase here in the number of 9s, but there were only 33 cards graded, so it's a pretty small sample size. And the last one I left out was this modern Dream League character rare, where we saw a pretty massive increase in 10s, from 6% to 35%. So if you're looking at this chart, what you're finding is that the largest increases in being easier graded are the modern English, and especially these modern Japanese. Now, of course, I only checked out 15 cards. We don't know. We also don't know if people are sending better cards now than they were before. But I don't know, because what we're finding here in these vintage cards is that across the board in vintage, there's not been a huge change in grading getting easier, with the exception here of this Black Star promo for the Mew, which had a significantly higher numbers of 9.5s and 10s, but we don't know. Maybe there's a reason for that. I mean, I don't know. But on all other elements, with the exception of this Pikachu, which has a very small sample size, these vintage cards do not appear to be getting graded easier. In fact, in some respects, we're seeing actually a higher number of low grades in these vintage cards. So just an interesting factor. So I think my conclusion overall, just from the data I've seen, and of course we're still waiting for more data, is that if you've got an old card, you're probably getting graded about the same difficulty, but you got a new card, they're giving out more 10s and 9.5s, which I don't know if that's a good or bad thing, but it's definitely something to be aware of if you're planning to send to CGC. So thanks for watching. I'll be making more videos as long as I'm in town. I might be traveling again soon, but we'll see. Really appreciate your time, and have a good afternoon.